So welcome to Loopback. Today we have Amy Stoke-Waters and Vincent Cook. Hi guys, how you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thanks to you.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Can't complain. Lockdown's lifting. Right.
Hey.
Exactly. I think today I booked the gym this morning because the lockdown weight has crept up on me very quickly. So I decided that I need to jump in. I need to jump back into that lifestyle. So yes.
I'm taking my lunch break at 3:00 because that's when the pub opens. So hopefully my boss does not listen to this before today.
I'm going to send it to the boss directly. Yep, I'm going to slide it right into his DMs.
Yeah.
Right. So Amy, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Where have you come from?
Hi guys. So I'm Amy Stoke-Waters. I work at a company called Cognisys Group. As a business development manager, we specialise in security testing, compliance standards, and some managed services.
Nice one. Vincent, yourself, where are you from?
Hi guys, I'm Vincent Cook. So I work for and the CEO and founder of Cyber Intelligence. We deliver a service called Close Digital Protection that looks at an extension to threat intelligence.
Very nice. Yes, there's some very interesting things that we're going to discuss around your organization. And if anyone's looking at him now, yes, he is 12. We'll just cut that, no, he's not really, but yes, he's very young but very capable. So yeah, we'll get into that. So I think I did want to start off with pen testing, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and some people have asked me before, is it worthwhile? So Amy, you work for a cyber assurance company, pen test organization, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
What is a good pen test? Like, is it a really good report? Is it a quality pen tester? If they've not been at MI, one of the MIs or GCHQ, is it not good? Or, what makes a good pen test worthwhile?
No, so I think you touched on two things there. So it's having a good pen tester. So when we do pen testing, we always have junior resource on it to help them kind of build their knowledge up, but we also support them with a senior tester on every project, so that any projects that you do always gets kind of overseen by someone who's got experience. But I think the report's really key. So there's no point having a really good pen tester and then not being able to kind of communicate what you've found in that pen test to someone, because if they've got to take that away and kind of explain to their business what the risk is associated with any kind of vulnerabilities that you found, if you can articulate that back to the client and make them understand what the hole is or the vulnerability is that you've discovered, there's not really much point in doing the pen test. And I think as well, making sure that you're building your testing into your processes. So not doing like a release of your software, then testing it, and then making a load of changes the week after, because you're back to square one again. Yeah. So if you kind of build pen testing into your software development lifecycle, then that makes it a much more useful exercise if you're doing kind of continuous testing rather than it being a tick box one-off compliance thing.
I see a lot of organizations that do want to do the tick box one-offs because they can do it in volume. And so I think it's quite interesting that you like to sell based upon being like that, almost like relationship sale. Like we'll be here for a long time, and we'll test now and again, and we'll test continuously, not just every year when the auditors come round looking to tick a box. I do quite like that.
So is your testing continuously? Is that part of the package you sell out, or is that something that is the one-off every month, or how does it work in packaging that up?
Yeah, so we have a service called Vulnerability Management as a Service, or VMAS, which kind of does automated pen testing, which I hate, which I think we'll discuss later. It's kind of like automated pen testing through, so that's continuous, so it's always switched on. So if there's something new pops up, you'll be able to see it. But then, getting an actual person to sit and kind of do a test as your software's being developed or as you're spinning up new infrastructure, I think that's really key, because like I said, if you release an app and then you test it, then it's all fine. But then if the next week your developers decide they're going to add another whole module onto the app or change a load of the code, then your pen test is basically invalid. It's like when you get your MOT and you walk out the garage and then you crash your car and your MOT is still valid somehow.
Yeah. So that kind of flows on nicely to what I want to ask next is Cyber Essentials. Like, it's been around for a few years now. It's almost seen as like the industry standard for like the first. If you were to do like ISO for beginners, you'd go, well, start with Cyber Essentials. That's what I generally say to people. Don't worry about ISO 27001. Like if you need it because a customer says you need it, then that's fantastic. But if you just want it because you've seen someone on LinkedIn saying you need ISO 27001 or you need PKI infrastructure to help secure your organization from ransomware.
Don't talk to me about PKI.
But so do you think Cyber Essentials is still a valid like certification or credential, or is it just a vanity badge? Like, are people just getting it now because it's you can just self-assess, which is almost pointless, or you can go for Cyber Essentials Plus and get someone to come in and have a look, which I think is still good. But do you think that it is valid in a modern world? Do you think it's still valid?
I think it depends how you're implementing it. So if, like you say, so I saw someone on LinkedIn the other day showing off that they'd got Cyber Essentials, and I was like, well done, I could print off Cyber Essentials. I could literally print off the certificate and colour it in and stick it on my wall and be like, look at me, I'm Cyber Essentials certified. Because you can just make up the answers if you want to, because no one's checking them. But I think if you're going to sit and do it properly and actually pay attention to kind of what the controls are that he's talking about, then yes, it is worthwhile, because you're actually trying to improve your security posture. So you put in secure passwords on your devices, or you're making sure that you've got a process in place for patching, or you've got some malware protection in place. But people like the NHS, loads of NHS trusts have got Cyber Essentials Plus, and I'm like, how have you got that? Because I know for a fact you're running legacy OS. We all know that the NHS is not fully Windows 10, right? So how have they got Cyber Essentials Plus? But loads of them do. But yeah, so if you're kind of using it as a tick box exercise to hit a compliance standard or win a contract or whatever, then it's probably not really worth the paper it's written on. But if you're actually looking at the controls and thinking how you can implement those into your environment not just for one tick box exercise, then yeah, I think it's useful.
Do you guys sell Cyber Essentials Plus testing?
We do.
But so have you ever come in a situation where someone's come and said, I want Cyber Essentials Plus, and the saleswoman in you's gone, all right, but realistically you're thinking it's pointless? Like, don't bother, let's do something else?
No, so I guess for like small one-man bands and stuff, some of them are having to get Cyber Essentials Plus just to win contracts. And I'm like, well, you could get it, but you're probably just better off switching MFA on and making sure your devices are up to date, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'll always try and sell stuff to someone. No, but I think if I'm actually trying to help them improve the maturity of their organisation and they want to get Cyber Essentials Plus, then we can kind of hit two birds with one stone there and help them improve kind of their standing and give them the certificate that they need for whatever job they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's important that you touched on that, one man band sort of company, because you look at, we deal with, one man bands all the way up to more matured startups, SMEs, SMBs. And I think it really depends as well on who you're targeting. I mean, we work with a particular client who's quite small at the minute, but they know that they need X, Y, Z. They know they need to hit certain compliance, and they're doing it because they want to, not just because of the badge. So I think, it depends on obviously who you're working with and if it is a, one man band gig kind of thing.
So Vincent, when you started out in this industry, you were a one-man band doing pen testing at college, and or when you were doing your GCSEs. I don't know when. Look at the time frames, but interesting. You started out doing pen testing, so which I like to call security assurance testing, because I think pen testing is almost it's a very masculine term. Which I discussed with someone quite a while ago, whether we should, is the term right for the industry, because it is very masculine and very, it could push that direction. So I like to call it cyber assurance testing. So, what took you into this way? Like, were you really technical?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, it was just before my GCSEs actually. Not even that long ago, right? But so I started out doing the pen testing, a lot of learning and finding out what it's all about, etc. But I sort of got really hooked into that breaking the systems. I used to build the computers and sell them, and then it got into breaking hardware, and then obviously more into that, software. What's it called? Software pen testing, if you like, and web app, right? I really enjoyed doing it, and I did it for a while. Did a couple of gigs, actually in London, but the phase that really caught me in the pen test is that information gathering phase, and I think that's sort of where I sort of went off into the OSINT space, and then found out what threat intelligence is, right? So it's interesting, and I did enjoy it, but it definitely wasn't my go-to thing to do.
I think that's really interesting, because I talk to a lot of students or people that are trying to come into the industry, and every time you say, what do you want to be when you join the industry, they're like, pen tester. And like, based on what? Based on what information do you want to be a pen tester? So it's good that you've kind of come into it from that angle. You've actually been a pen tester and then realised that it's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, or it wasn't like the right thing for you, and you found something more interesting and a different kind of path to go down.
100% right. And I think what was tough as well last year when COVID came about at the start of the year, I had applied for the training and started the training on the CREST CPSA and CRT certifications, which I knew that I wanted to get and achieve. But obviously based on the COVID situation, it was really hard to deal with that, do the exams and all sorts, right? So still something in the pipeline looking to do. Obviously my main focus now isn't that role, but nonetheless the sort of technical and practitioner side of a pen tester, I still are interested in learning that, to just have that base knowledge. Yeah.
So do you think, so you've come into this field and I wouldn't say you've quickly exited. You've pivoted. You still have some of that technical capability or knowledge. It's still stuck. It's still stuck with you. But do you think this field is becoming commoditized really quickly? Because so many people want to be pen testers, and I wouldn't say there's lots and lots of pen testers, but like how do you see how the value of pen testing continuing without it becoming a commodity, without it becoming next generation firewall, which is now just commoditized?
Do you not think that it depends kind of what you want to get out of a pen test? So I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and we were saying if it's a tick box exercise that you're doing, then it is a commodity for your business. Like you're just going to go with the person who can take the
cheapest,
like the cheapest one. But if you're actually trying to protect your organisation, then you want to find the best person to do it. So that's not necessarily the cheapest person. In fact, I'm pretty much guarantee it's not the cheapest person. So that's when it becomes not commoditized. That's when it becomes professional services and something that you've got goals and you're actually trying to achieve something.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think I think it's actually already happened. But there's already organisations which, and we won't name them, but there's already organisations that just do commodity pen tests. They've got about 70 pen testers on the staff. Majority of them juniors, which is no problem. It's a great place for them to learn to craft their skill and move on. But there's already commodity organizations. But I also feel, speaking to a lot of clients, that because of that, when you price up a penetration test or security assurance testing, they say, well, I can go there for £500 a day. Why am I spending 13, 14, 1,500, or £2,000 from you?
But then I think, like you said, you're getting a junior pen tester. You're not getting someone who's got that experience. Like Vincent, I'm sure you're a cracking pen tester, but you haven't got the 10 years experience or 15 years experience that someone who's worked in the industry for that amount of time has, and there's seen like the pitfalls and seen, all of the different ways that things can kind of go wrong. So I think that's how it gets commoditized when people start using junior pen testers. And like there's like no environment's ever that straightforward. I mean, we get the odd testing where it's like they want to test their website and it's just a brochureware website and it's like half a day because there's literally nothing on it. So they're fine to do that, but we still oversee everything with a senior tester because you never know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think some businesses have some organizations have almost like Huawei the industry. So like by driving the price down, and unfortunately sometimes the quality, it's driven it down for everyone else. So it's almost like benchmarked it. So if you go in with a high quality test at a more reasonable price for the quality, it's just not going to fly. And that's just my personal experience. I've seen they've said no because no, I'll go cheaper. And I say I'll go cheaper, then that's no problem. Like, it's not my problem. At the end of the day, it's not my issue. Like, if something happens, it's not a certificate to say you're never going to get hacked by buying a pen test. And I think that kind of segues onto the next point is I think unfortunately some businesses feel like if I have a pen test, I'm cool. Like, I'm never going to have an issue. So how do you feel businesses can better protect themselves? Like, you touched on MFA earlier, Amy. Like, how can businesses actually feel more assured that they're doing the right things rather than panicking all the time?
I think getting the basics in place and stop trying to target some silver bullet solution like PKI. So I'm in a group chat with a few ladies of the cybersecurity industry. We always talk about, there's someone who posts about PKI a lot, and we always spend our time laughing about the PKI thing, because we're like, PKI is not how you're getting ransomware into your environment. PKI is coming in because someone got phished. Or they're clicking on a link in an email that they shouldn't be clicking on. It's literally PKI. I can guarantee that it's not now and never will be a major issue for businesses, PKI. So we all just need to just get over that one. That's literally why we've got an award for top snake oil hunter in the Artificially Unintelligent Awards.
The funny thing is, for some businesses, I can confirm that for some businesses that I've worked with, PKI infrastructure is actually really, really important, and they get it wrong, and they actually have, and this is, whoever they might go on.
If the majority of businesses, the majority of clients I speak to are still struggling to get MFA switched on, they're not patching the systems in a reasonable time frame. Like, that's is a much bigger security problem.
Oh yeah.
Than PKI, right? So if you can't get the basics right, there's no point targeting like this little teeny tiny thing over in this top corner. You need to get the foundations in place.
But you've done video series on Cyber Essentials, and you're doing one now on Monitor Attack. And you'll be the first person to say you're not a technical person straight away, but you understand Cyber Essentials.
That is rude. How dare you say that?
Well, yeah. Well, you're technical enough to be able to sell assurance testing and X, Y, and Z. But you broke it down in some really simple, quick, easy videos. And Cyber Essentials is the basics, like antivirus, patching, firewalling, which is now still a bit antiquated.
Yeah.
But so if those basics aren't being followed, why are we still in trouble then? Why are smaller businesses still? Is it the information isn't there? Are we just like in a bubble where we see this information constantly, so we're bored of it? And there's others, the pub landlord or the retail the retail shop in the corner, they just don't get visibility of this information.
It is exactly that. So I think when you're looking at small businesses, they don't have someone there who's dedicated to IT. They've probably got, like, the person who owns the business is probably the IT person, right? That's not necessarily the right person to be managing your IT unless you're technically minded. So if you don't understand what the risks are and you don't understand like why people are telling you to do these things, you can often just think of it as being a headache. It's like when I tell my dad he needs to switch MFA on Facebook, and he's like, why? It's just a pain in the ass. And I'm like, it is a pain in the ass, like the first time you use it, but then after that, it's totally fine, and it stops people hacking into your account. And he's like, "Well, no one's going to want to steal any of my information." I'm like, "Okay, Dad, well."
And that is the thing. I don't know why people keep saying this. Is, well, why would someone want to hack us? And I'm like, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't get why you're saying that.
I'm sure, Vincent, you must have loads about this.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of people that, especially when we deal with even the C-suite of organizations, they're very embarrassed to admit certain things that we may find, and whether it's on a pen test or a threat intelligence one-off kind of gig, there's a lot of that, and even down to friendships and friends as well. It's like, oh no, we're not going to get hacked. That they'll never find this information, kind of thing. We'll never find our data on the dark web. It's always these questions. There's a lot of it.
Yeah. Okay. I do find it funny, and I guess, Vincent, you have a lot of social media, I was going to say tycoons, but maybe that's the right word, actually. You have a lot of social media influencers and on portfolio. And that's probably even a little bit more technical, a bit more savvy. How does that work in terms of, are they clued up about security, or are they just worried about people taking over their accounts or finding their saucy photos online?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, right? Because how do you get the message across to them that they need our services, but you know, they don't necessarily want to pay this amount of money for it, right? And I think that's where our branding came into it and the way we message out. Our branding, we didn't call it threat intelligence for starters, just because of the demographic and the type of people we're targeting, right? As soon as they hear cybersecurity, it's like, oh, you know, wasting money type thing, right? Especially when it comes to those influencers and high net worth individuals, etc. So we did call it close digital protection because typically these guys understand what close protection is and what that could, you know, insinuate, right? So that's the message, and we use the word like branding protection, your brand protection, reputation management. It's not cyber security words or anything like that. And then when we also use this protection that will make them more money in the sense that they won't be breached, and they won't have to pay out for this and they won't have to pay out for that on potential insurance or any, you know, lawyer or solicitor's fees, etc. Things like that. When we translate it like that, it becomes like, oh, well, you know, let's go for it, let's do it. So it's just trying to move away from that technical language more into a bit more of an understanding space in how we message that out.
Yeah. And I will be honest with you, I do think that is the problem with this industry. Is one, we are a smallish group of people, very technical, who want job security. So we keep it as technical as possible, so that there's people like myself who can go into organizations and explain these really technical terms to non-technical people. And I think that's why we do it.
Am I blowing a big hole in all of this then? Because I literally sit and explain everything in the least technical way possible.
Yeah. But I think if it's it is also a problem. It's also like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it's created a job market which a lot of people don't know about, but that almost like a consultative job market, or the ability to say this is a very technical term, these are the business risks, and this is why you need it. And it's a curse because it's so technical. People look at it and think, "Oh, I'm not going to do that." And I always mention about this comment is I had a comment on LinkedIn beginning of the year after SolarWinds from a business owner who said, if SolarWinds can get hacked and all these large organizations can get compromised, why bother? I'll just wait for my cyber insurance to kick in. And I thought, oh my gosh, if that's what one person thinks, then there must be multiple people who think exactly the same thing.
Yeah, but then I think, how did these big organizations, they get hacked? So if you look at like the Marriott, it wasn't the Marriott that got hacked, it was a Marriott supplier that got hacked, and then they ended up hacking. Like, that's how the Marriott got hacked. So this is why we need all these small companies that are like, well, cybersecurity doesn't matter to me. I'm like, yeah, but who are you supplying? Who are you supplying our services to? Because if you're supplying our services to a bigger organization, that's exactly why you will be a target, because there's some people are trying to get to the bigger organizations, but they'll do it via the back door of the smaller organizations that they're working with. And I'm guessing you look at this kind of stuff, Vincent, when you're like doing your OSINT, like who are the suppliers for these people?
Yeah. I mean, that's one way of looking at who the suppliers for those people and potentially protecting them. But even for ourselves as well, we are at the moment a fairly small company, and you look at who we're dealing with, the reputation that these guys have. If somebody is almost doing a counterintelligence, gig on us, then effectively they will find out that we're dealing with their entire footprint, and we are a small organisation that can be hacked. So, it just depends which way you look at it. But then, as you said, the way in terms of who our clients are supplying, and that we need to protect them and their information that's potentially, in the supply chain, and how that could be hacked, etc. Right. So that sort of third-party risk assessment for us is quite important as well, to just make sure it's all within a controlled bubble.
I like that, because I feel like third-party risk assessment is difficult for a lot of businesses to do, even large businesses, because they either don't have the relationship they require with their third parties to correctly assess the risk, or they have a spreadsheet and they just leave it in there, and then when the ISO auditor comes around, they say, oh yeah, these are our third parties, and we've just like put high, medium, low, and that's it, and they never continually assess that. I don't know if there is. I know there's lots of GRC tools out there that do this, and Recorded Future have got one, and there's loads of, there's specialist organizations and vendors who look at third party risk, but they're expensive, and they're also viewed, well, some are expensive, and they're also viewed as nice to haves, which is a shame. And it should, for a big business, it shouldn't be nice to have, or even a medium business, it should be a necessity to say, well, I need actually someone to come in and assess my risk appetite or my risk acceptance to some of these risky vendors, you can call them.
I used to work at an identity management company, and we used to talk around like attestation processes for who's got access to your environment. So like recertifying if third parties have got access into your environment. There was one college that I was working with. This is a really bad story. They had an MSP, and they gave everyone in the MSP global admin to their all 45 people that worked at the MSP had a global admin account for this college, which was like it was a decent college. But they just clearly had no concept of why that would be a big issue. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who works at this MSP? Why do you need 45 global admins? They're like, well, it's just easier, isn't it? All right. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's because someone at the MSP would have said, we need global admin access to your AD to do X, Y, and Z, and they would have blindly said, sure. Yeah. Because the person in the MSP is viewed as a trusted advisor to that customer, so they'll believe anything they say.
But the MSP should be flagging this up and going, probably shouldn't have given us all this access. Like maybe just like just two of us, one of us would be fine.
They probably don't understand why they've asked for global admin, and that's the thing is. And I recently reviewed a couple of DR solutions, and a lot of the cloud DR solutions require global admin to Azure AD, and there's a friend of ours. I'm not going to shout him out because he'll enjoy it too much. But he absolutely hates global admin, and he'd rather do the most complicated way of setting things, like setting up the access. And you notice how I said the most complicated way, because global admin, like you just said, is easier, and that's why vendors use it. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of the SolarWinds attacks happened, because a lot of the cloud software that they sell had global admin to tons of customers.
Yeah, but privileged identity management isn't that hard to set up. You can do it in Azure AD pretty easily, so you get just in time and just enough access. So you can elevate your privileges to global admin for the time that you need it, and then you just go back down to a normal user account. But no one needs global admin 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's like you said, Amy, it's easier. Talking about things that are easy, automated pen testing. Talk to me about it. So I've had very limited experience with automated pen testing. One, because I viewed a vendor a few years ago, and it looked cool, like it was just like flashy lights and cool infographics, but like I didn't really see like much of a market for it, and it just looked like it to me. It was vulnerability management with some extended scripts.
That's exactly what I think it is. So I was talking to someone the other day about this, and they were like, well, we just sell automated pen testing to all of our small business users because that's all they need. And going back to that supply chain thing, like that's not all they need. They actually need a proper pen test. Like you can't beat someone sitting there manually looking at the issues. Like with every pen test we do, we always do a vulnerability scan to start with, just to see kind of blanket like where the holes are, right? But then we look into those things that have been flagged up because a lot of the time it comes back with like false positives or false negatives. So I think there is scope for using it as part of like your secure development life cycle. So making sure, if when you start developing code, run that kind of automated pen test on it to check whether anything big flags up. But then you still need someone to manually kind of sit there and like dig into it a little bit further.
I see. Go on, Vincent. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with you on that point that it should be the same as having somebody manually and sit there and look at it. But I also think, on the other hand, that these are smaller organisations that want some level or foundation of pen testing. I think it is a nice entry point, even though it isn't where it should be. It's a really nice, cost-effective entry point into the space, rather than not doing anything about it. With their budgets, which could be quite tight because they're smaller organisations. I think it's a really nice stepping stone, and then they can move to that. Okay, we've got an idea of our environment. We understand that there's a few vulnerabilities here. There could be more, but let's move on to that later when we've got budget for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that I do when I'm talking to small customers is I always talk to them about budget, because we know that kind of cash is king, especially with small businesses. So if they haven't got loads of budget, we will sit and talk to them about kind of what infrastructure they've got, what applications they've got, and we'll work out a batting order for what they should be doing. So try and get them the most bang for the buck, essentially. So like starting off with an external infrastructure test, which they're not often like massive deals, an external test, but just see like if someone can actually get into your account, into your environment from an unauthenticated point of view. But I wouldn't try and we don't try and like sell the world to everyone all the time.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you almost prioritize and categorize. Okay, this is going to cost you this much to get to this stage. Then it's an additional to get here, and break that cost down. And we've done that recently with a client, and they find it so much easier to consume and understand. Okay, this is where they're going to be at when they pay for this, and then they can upgrade, if you like, as they move forward and mature.
Yeah, I think it's about, like you said, mature there. I think that's a really good word. It's about having that kind of like plan in place for customers, because everyone wants to be secure. There's no businesses out there that are thinking, I don't want to be secure. I just think it's a load of rubbish. So they all kind of want to get into that better place, but it's just helping them with those stepping stones to kind of get there in the kind of time frame and with the money that they've got available.
Yeah. So we've come. So do you think there's a place for it then? I know you don't really like it. But
I hate automated pen testing in general, but like Vincent said, I think if you're doing nothing, then it's better than doing nothing.
I definitely think there is a place for it, but it's got to be at the right stage at the right time for an organisation.
No, I totally agree. I would love to see more of a focus around patch management and vulnerability management. I do think it is one of the unsung heroes of cybersecurity. Is a really good vulnerability management tool. I think it's difficult because say if you've got 100 PCs and you don't have MDM, or you don't have some sort of central way of managing them all, that's 100 PCs you've got to go and patch, or 100 PCs to make sure they've not missed update Tuesday, they've been online.
Who realistically doesn't have an M365 license now? Most people have got Intune. So,
well, yeah, they might have 365, but have they deployed Intune, or or maybe they've got bring your own device, and they think, well, I'll just let the employee deal with that.
Bring your own device as well. It's still covered by Intune anyway. But I always think, what are people doing with BYOD? I've talked to so many customers about BYOD, and I'm like, are you using BYOD? And they're like, no, definitely not. I'm like, are you accessing emails on your personal phone? Oh, yeah, we all do that. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. Maybe we need to rethink what BYOD means then. But yeah, like patching for that. So I'm enrolled in our MDM service for ours, so I've had to update my phone last night, because otherwise I was just going to get cut out of my own phone, I think.
It happens to me quite often, actually. It's not updated. It's because there's an iOS update every 2 seconds at the moment.
But I was thinking about this the other day. I think Apple are really good at getting people to patch the devices, because they always
force it.
Well, they force it, but they bring out like little Easter egg features, don't they? So like, there was a massive security update, was it last year, where everyone got them Animoji things, and all my mates were like, have you upgraded your phone yet? And I was like, nah, I haven't looked at it. And they were like, oh, we've got these Animojis, and I was like, oh my god, I want to be able to make an Animoji and send you like one video then never use that feature again. But I always bring out like cool little things like that kind of get people wanting to update the phones.
You should pitch
I think
that.
as well, I think it's simplicity as well with the iOS. You know, it comes up with a notification you need to upgrade, and it's one click of a button. It does it in the background, and then you reset and it's done, right? I'm not an expert, you know, patch management in the field, if you like, but I think that, I don't know if it's like that at the minute where it's as simple as that, but you know, that could be an issue with it, is simplicity.
It's not that simple. I mean, we have very much the mixed estate. My organization and other organizations do as well. And even if you've got Macs, Linux, Windows, they all have different types of patch management tools. Macs, you've got Jamf. Windows, you've got SECM, and there's loads of others. Big Fix is probably the most popular. And then Linux is, well, look on GitHub. It's just or roll your own. I feel like it's one of those areas that's so complicated to get right, and there's not many people do have it right. And there's some organizations that do a really, really good job of it, and they've just enforced tons and tons of policy and gone, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to make sure every machine is patched and up to date. Because as you know, guys, like most of the vulnerabilities are exploited within 2-3 days.
Well, yeah. I did I do a podcast? No, I think I did a video on this the other week. If you've got Patch Tuesday, Microsoft tell you what they're patching. Like, there's a big set of release notes that go in. Here's a list of things that we've fixed. So that's just literally saying to an attacker, here's a list of holes that we previously had available. So here's all the ways you can exploit people now. So no wonder they get hacked within like 2 or 3 days of Patch Tuesday happening, because if you haven't instantly implemented that security update, then everyone knows why you're wide open to things.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I noticed that a lot of people on LinkedIn last week, and I think Catlin, Campus Cody was posting this about a lot of US organizations have now been ransomware has been dropped in their organizations through a CV that came out in 2018, and I'm thinking, why is this CV still present on your VPN concentrator? It always makes me laugh when organizations haven't patched their security appliance, and I think that should be the first place you should be patching. But yeah, I think it goes down to that communication, and a lot of businesses don't have anyone that's responsible for these things and takes ownership of them, and it just gets really complicated in big businesses. But I do think, for me, I really try and focus on patch management. When I do my when I do our security assessments here, it's the one thing that I look at, is I look to see if there's any external exploitable CVEs. Same thing you would have done in the recon stages, Vincent, is every single pen tester, the first thing they do a bit of recon, look for CVEs, and that's what I do. And I focus on the focus on those CVEs and not whether they've got quantum AI, PKI. So Vincent, one of the things that I want to ask you, because you know this is your business, but what is the difference between digital risk and threat intelligence?
I think it's an interesting question, and I think it's a grey area, you know, in terms of what we can actually look at and find, and what differentiates us between other people. You know, when we do our CDP service and conduct that on a client, over, you know, whether it's an on-demand service or a managed, we differentiate the two, and we can offer both to the client. We have a wide range of services within that and capabilities. So for example, online asset monitoring that comes within that is very similar to your traditional threat intelligence, you know, looking at the domains, looking at potential phishing domains, looking at the IP addresses, external assessments, that kind of stuff, complex IOCs, etc. And then we can all go all the way over to social media monitoring, and then into vulnerability assessments as well, right? At the moment, that's all external, as you said, looking at the CVEs on potential IP addresses and domains they've got. Yeah, so it's such a wide range of where we're looking at. And I think that does differentiate us in the sense that, we aren't just looking at one thing that you may be looking at in digital assurance or whatever it may be. It's a sort of an end-to-end service, and also how we actually deliver that to the client. So we do have a double sort of portal system where effectively we have an analyst looking at the information that's coming in from our API feeds and our proprietary technology, and then we produce that to the client in soon to be in a couple of weeks, actually, an online portal where they can see all of that information in one place. So it does really range in that sense.
So it was a little bit of a loaded question, because I wanted to ask you, is what I just said brand protection, or is it something different?
Yeah. And we've had some clients, it's interesting, right? We've had some clients come to us and say, can we have your brand protection module, which is effectively all of our capabilities wrapped up in one, because ultimately you are protecting a brand. I'm not a massive fan of that brand protection, because everything you do is to protect your brand ultimately. Because some clients, right, it's really hard to sell dark web monitoring to somebody that has never been spoken about in the dark web before, and is probably, they're a one-man band or, a 10-man company, and they probably aren't going to be spoken about on the dark web for a long time, right? So it's really hard to sell that. It really does.
Facebook's got hacked, though. Everyone's details are on the dark web now, so you'll find it a lot easier to sell.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting topic. That breach was, as you know, from vulnerability from 2019. And obviously, I actually remember last year looking at that on the dark web and people sort of shifting that information around, or variants of it. I know there was some updated data, etc. But yeah, everybody's within that list, right? There was like 530 odd million. And we do scan through that with our clients and make sure nobody's leaked, etc.
Is it actually a risk though? Like, I saw that and thought, most of that data is actually already publicly available. Birth dates, phone number, name, address. Like, you can pretty much within a couple of Google searches find that information.
Oh, you can do it off the electoral roll if you're on the electoral roll.
Is
exactly.
it that? I know a lot of people made a big fuss about it, but is the fuss that it was all in one source, or is the fuss the information that was actually leaked?
I think it does depend, right? Because there's some people within that just don't want their information out there, right? Even though that it might already be out there. And I think it also depends on where you are at in the world. You look over in the States and we can quite easily access voting data. That's all open source, public records on where you live from, your utility bills. As soon as you move a house and you start paying utility bills in the States, within 90 days, you'll be on a people search engine somewhere, right? So I think with the privacy concerns out in the States, that's completely different to the UK. In the UK, you can't necessarily just go on a people search engine and find somebody. Obviously, you can go on the registry and land records and do a whole process behind that, but it's not as easy as the States. So with this data, I think that, obviously you've got, as you said, the phone numbers and the accounts. From my point of view, and when we use it, we have the data and the ID numbers connected with the phone numbers. So when we are doing an investigation and we come across maybe partial phone numbers or phone numbers connected to other accounts, we can effectively use this now as a massive repository of, here's a phone number and here's an account that exactly, that matches that. So the data isn't necessarily, mind blowing, there's no passwords or anything like that, but the way it can be used to connect people to other people and potentially further investigations or something against somebody, I think that's quite scary.
How I explained it to a couple of family members in the week, they were socially distant. Well, they were in my garden, so it was in the rules. So yeah, you got to preference
If
everything.
you just told us that you called him, Ashley, then we wouldn't have known any difference.
Yeah, true. I don't call people there, so I don't even leave a voicemail, so I wouldn't have called them. But I explained it in terms of that the information is now linked with your with a Facebook profile. So how I would use it if I was an attacker or trying to exploit someone is to
I'm not giving anyone any tips here, by the way. Don't pay
no. This isn't any tips or anything like that. But I would attribute that information to the fact that it was linked to Facebook and ring them up and say, "Hi, I'm Facebook. This is your name. This is your date of birth. Can you please reset your password? We need to do something." Yeah. And that for me, the data itself couldn't give a shit about. Like the data itself. If my data's in there, that's fantastic. Give me a call. But it's the fact that the data is linked to an entity, which then could be used for social engineering and exploiting. That I think that for me, that's the more important kind of element of this.
Yeah, 100%, and it goes back to using it to build a footprint on somebody, right? And you can now use that data. So, for example, you come across a Facebook account from potentially a source, whether that be people, the PIPL or PDL, something like that. You bring that in, and then you've got an account, and then you can scan through all of this and find a phone number, and then from that phone number, you could potentially go to WhatsApp, Signal. Are they linked into these accounts? Whatever it may be. It just makes that step in the chain a lot easier, as an investigator.
So, talking about public profiles and being out on the internet, one of the things I talk about a lot to some of the grads that we have here is about public brand. I feel that in information security, you almost hit a ceiling if you don't have a public brand. And maybe I'm wrong about this. But a lot of the individuals that I speak to and interact with have quite large or sizable public brands on LinkedIn and Twitter and X, Y, and Z. And one of our guests is, one of them, a cybersecurity influencer. And so with everything that you've
stop saying influencer, stop saying it.
I'm trying to say it as many times as possible. So it just coined. I didn't even coin the phrase. I can introduce you to the person who did, but I didn't even coin the phrase. But from everything you've just said, then Vincent, and with someone that is I wouldn't say you're relatively new into cybersecurity, and we discussed last week about your OPSEC paranoia. How do you build a public brand and your business, and then also use really good or practice really good information security?
Yeah, and it's a long-winded question, but I always are doing assessments on myself, for example, when it comes to OSINT and OPSEC, and I'm making sure that everything is aligned and I know exactly where all of my data is. I regularly spend time going through services and emails and whatever, and just deleting information, requesting it to be removed. Obviously, in the UK now, GDPR UK, so. For me, it's definitely tough because it's exactly what you said there. Obviously, I'm quite a young entrepreneur and looking to grow that business, but am I going to hit a ceiling based on how far I'm going to open up online effectively? I think that, I don't have any social media in my name for, just general social life, right? I don't see the point in it, to be honest with you.
Don't you work with Instagram people?
Yeah, that's why I said it's not in my name. It's under, obviously an alias and stuff for our investigations. But I don't, I have that in place. But I'm always concerned about the image that's out there, and then how that sort of works as well with trying to become an entrepreneur, right? There's certain things that I'll always keep to myself, and I'm quite introverted in that sense. But even like down to the sense I'm currently writing a book. So, with that, there's going to be a lot of information about myself and, my personality out there within that book, right? So it's really hard for me at the minute. I'm sort of juggling between, OPSEC or brand, and which way do I go down? And if I do this with my brand, what OPSEC is then impacted on that?
I think doing stuff like this podcast, though, this is all about your brand. You're getting to talk about yourself and stuff, but you're not necessarily giving any information away. I don't think I could guess your password based on this conversation.
It's password, isn't it? You just you're so smart. You're like, well, what's the thing that people wouldn't guess?
But that's a good point.
The 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no, it's a good point though, because if I was a threat actor and I wanted to do that would be the 100% the password I use against my emails, purely because I know they're burner emails. And if I have an investigator looking into me and they look at breached repositories and databases, if they try and reverse password search and try and link to other emails, if they're going to search password or password 123, they've got no chance, right? And similarly with aliases and names, if you create aliases and names that are people on Wikipedia or out there that are famous, it becomes extremely hard to filter that information to your target.
So, Amy's built a brand, I would say, because we're all about personal brand, and I think it gets you really far in this industry. Or to be fair, there's some individuals out there in this industry who've built their personal brand like yourself, Vincent, without revealing pretty much no information
about them.
Yeah, I mean, a really good example is FC. So Freaky Clown, that's his alias, and no one, some people know his real name. Obviously, his wife knows his real name, but other than that, he's built a brand based upon being mysterious. And I spoke to Jack Cider. He's exactly the same. He's built a brand based upon being mysterious. So maybe you just need to start wearing masks. And the hacker hoodie.
Oh yeah, I hate those images and the Guy Fawkes mask. It cringes me every time I see something like that.
So Amy, how have you built your brand so fast?
Well, I was thinking this the other day. It looks like I've done it really quickly, but so I realised most people had no clue who I was 3 months ago. I'm sure most people have no clue who I am now, by the way. I've actually kind of been laying the groundwork on my network for about 18 months. So I've built my network up of CISOs, CTOs, people who work in the industry. So when I started in January, I already had a connection base of 7,000 people. So I've added 2,000 in the last 3 months. But I've already been involved with the community and kind of been doing my recon on it, really. Scoping out who's who. But I think the way that I've got kind of improved my brand recently is kind of engaging with people who are doing good things. So talking to people like Lisa Forte or Holly Grace or Jay Harris or Sean or you guys, and kind of learning from people who are at the top of their game and seeing kind of what they're doing around their brand as well. Also, I'm not being funny, but I am quite interesting. So that always helps when I'm putting videos and stuff out. If you can articulate yourself in an interesting way, then people want to listen to you. So getting your point across quickly, having diverse content. But I tried loads of stuff out that flops.
So what brought you into InfoSec then? So you've got, you said in January you had 8,000 connections, but you didn't start LinkedIn with 8,000 connections. How did that start?
So my last job was working at a Microsoft partner who kind of focused on the Microsoft security side of things. So it was more like vendor sales rather than true InfoSec, which is what I refer to it as now. But I kind of, because I was doing business development, we've always got to be talking to new people. So I just started adding CTOs, CISOs, people in the industry, trying to get an understanding of the industry and work out kind of where our product set fit in that as well. So that you can kind of work out where you are in the ecosystem. So you can work out where to get some leads from.
But so have you always been, did you just start working this identity company because it was a job, or did you have an interest in it?
I wanted to leave my previous place of employment, and I just stuck my CV out there, and someone rang me and was like, "Yeah, do you want to come and work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, all right, cool."
Yeah, I love
it. So literally accident. I know people keep saying that they accidentally fall into a job, but I'm like, no, I literally did just fall into a job. I was like, the first place that rang me offered me a job, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fucking brilliant. Let's go.
It's so weird, but I spoke to Jay Harris the other day, and he said exactly the same thing. He just fell into InfoSec. I'm like, how, mate? You're so good at it. How did you just fall into InfoSec? But I think so many people do. They had no plans to be in this arena, and then all of a sudden they find themselves.
But I think as soon as you like get even just a little bit involved with it, you find out that the community is like so inclusive, and everyone wants to teach you things, and everyone wants to help each other out. Like, I think there's loads of industries that get a really bad rap, and I don't think cybersecurity is really one of them. I think everyone is lovely, like, all the time. There's obviously the odd dickhead out there, as there is with every industry. But like, the amount of new friends that I've made, even just over the last 3 months, has been like absolutely mind blowing.
I think it's very sort of closed in the sense as well. Everybody knows everybody, or everybody knows somebody that knows somebody else that knows you, right? I think it's in that sense it's quite nice to have that community element of it.
Yeah,
I do. I think this industry is very positive for that community aspect, and it has a very, I don't see a community this strong of a community for, Microsoft SECM admins, because one, it's dead boring. But I don't see that type of community. I think InfoSec is one of the only communities that have this really big social aspect to it, when everyone wants to get together and talk about products and talk about technology. And I do think that is really interesting. But also on the other aspect, there is some dark side to this community as well. I've seen some really, I've been a part of some really weird things and some really big egos, and I think, why? Like, this slither, this negative part of information security exists nowhere else. Again, if you were to go to the SECM community, they probably aren't all, being macho bravos thinking, look how good at deploying software I am. But in cybersecurity, you got people saying, shellcode to shellcode, look how good I am. Look at the CVEs I can find, and look at how big of a bounty I've done this year. Yeah,
but I think that's like, well, to be fair, for me, it didn't really bother me because I'm used to working in sales, where you've always got somebody trying to Billy Big Ball you, going, well, look at this deal that I've just done, and you're like, yeah, fucking great, mate. Yeah. That was last month. We've moved on now. So I think I'm kind of used to that bravado side of things. So that never really bothers me. But I get like a lot of technical people are a little more introverted, but I think cybersecurity does tend to attract like the extrovert introverts. That makes sense. Like, they want to show off about what they've been doing, but also they also want to sit by themselves in a little basement and play on the computer.
Yeah, no, I get it. I do get that. So for you, for both Amy and Vincent, really, have you planned what success looks for you? Like, everyone has different ideas of what success looks like in information security, but Vincent, you're building multiple organizations, so what is your end goal?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I had this question the other day, actually. What do you want to do in 10 years' time, or where do you want to be, right? So 100% is building the brands that I'm starting. So with Cyber Intelligence and the other company as well, Cyber Inspire, that aims to basically make cyber education more accessible for younger people and the people that potentially went through the same situation as I did throughout, school, in that sense. But yeah, so my goal is to keep building that brand and build that up and make it more aware, especially when it comes to that education. I'm really, really sort of, inspired by that piece. So that's sort of my 10-year goal, if that makes sense. And obviously, I just want future is for me making a difference. I'd really like to just make a small difference, or do small things that then equate to a big difference, right? But yeah, that's sort of my 10-year goal at the minute.
Do you think there's ever a place, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for this, but do you think there's ever a place where you'd see yourself doing some sort of like formal cybersecurity education? Like, to be fair with you, I don't think it's necessary in the slightest. Like, you're doing well without it. But do you think that there'll come a time where someone will say, "Where's your degree? Where's your this? Where's your that?"
Yeah, and I took that into a lot of consideration last year when I decided to drop out of school last January. So quite quite a good time, actually, no opportunity cost because of COVID, right? But I took that into consideration, and I had actually been speaking to some of the guys over at Westminster University about the decision, because obviously they do the MSc in cybersecurity there, and what it was like. And based on, again, this is just my opinion and what I've heard from people, is that it's quite slow in the sense when it comes to university and cybersecurity. It's always like a game of cat and mouse. Trying to catch up with what the latest things are out there. And again, that's just from what I've heard, right? So it was a question that, okay, do I go and try and do this, or do I just dive straight into it? So I do think that formal education piece may come later on, and I would be more than willing to go back to university and study something. Not a problem. I think in terms of certifications now, there's definitely some certifications I do want to check off, like the threat analyst and criminal intelligence and criminal analysis and social media and all of that good stuff, right? That's definitely in the pipeline, and I think that will sort of come on top already what I'm doing at the minute.
Do you think you want to get them certifications because you need them to get work, or do you think they'll actually teach you things?
It's a good question, and I think it plays somewhere in between. We've had some instances where it's like, okay, what use certifications? We work with physical protection agencies, and a lot of these guys are ex-military, and they're like, okay, what have you done? Where have you been? What are you qualified to do, kind of thing. And in that sense, okay, it'd be great to hand them a certificate, but I look at a lot at some of these certifications, specifically when it comes to OSINT, and it's like I don't necessarily want to pay for them just for a certificate. I'd rather pay for something, learn from the material, because it is always changing, but learn from that material and then apply it rather than just a bit of paper. But again, it really does depend on the situation, obviously, what you're looking at doing, right?
Yeah, I really do respect that. I think
that certification thing is quite an interesting one. Like, I was on Cyber House Party a couple of weeks ago talking around like blockers to getting in the industry, and people talk about certifications, and we were saying like hackers don't have what certifications does the person hacking your account have? Have they got a degree in cybersecurity? Yeah. It's likely, isn't it? Like you don't need a degree to be able to hack people in the same way you don't need a degree to be able to defend people.
I think it's all been driven by HR processes and employers wanting certain quote unquote standard to say, well, if you've not got an MSCP, then we're not going to bring you in to be an application tester, because there's no way of proving. Well, there's definitely ways of proving how good an individual is. And a lot of organizations don't want to take bets on newer entries into the industry. They don't want to spend 6 months to a year actually growing them up into an individual. Well, I think more organizations should take those bets, because that's how you build loyalty into your staff base. If you take them on when they're fresh out of university and say, this is our plan for you for the next couple of years, more than likely they're going to stay in that organization, rather than saying, if you've not got 5 years, go away. So yeah, I do think it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's next for you then, Amy? Like, where how do you see yourself growing into? You've got multiple businesses going on, or side projects, or
I've always got since January I seem to have side hustles going on left, right and centre, which is always fun. So I'm currently working at Cognisys. We're expanding our team. We've got a really good team dynamic, so we're just trying to make sure everyone sees us as being an absolutely fantastic business, and kind of growing our customer base from there. Also working on the Artificially Unintelligent Awards, which may or may not have happened by the time Ashley gets around to editing this podcast.
Don't pressure me.
No pressure. So that's just basically it's a piss take award ceremony, because loads of people seem to be asking people in our industry to pay like $2,000 to win an award. So we're giving them out for free. Everyone's nominated for them via the community, and they're kind of to highlight issues that we've got in the community. So things like snake oil salespeople, or we've got top troll hunter, or we've got like top cyber lady brain, for people who, we look for us lady-brained people out there. And then I'm working on another side project that kind of came out of a joke tweet, actually. So I was drunk the other week, as usual. And I really wanted to use the word info sexy in a tweet because it just made me laugh when I thought of it. So I was like, oh, we should have a dating app for the infosec community called Info Sexy. And then like 1,000 people liked this tweet and everyone was talking about it. And I was like, oh shit, maybe this could be a real thing. So I'm kind of working on a project at the moment. Don't worry, guys, it's not a dating app because I know there's like a really small amount of women in cybersecurity and would all be far too high in demand if it was a dating app. But it's going to be like, it's like a community thing. So when you go into a conference, you can match up with friends that are going to it as well. So if you're interested in pen testing or if you're interested in OSINT, you'll be able to like swipe to say like, I want to find some friends that are interested in this and be able to like swipe on people. So it's still in it's still like a what's it called?
Ideation.
Yeah, still working on it. So we're just trying to talk to some app developers at the moment to try and get a proof of concept out. But yeah, we've got some interesting plans for it.
So you say it's not going to turn into a dating app, but it almost sounds like a dating app.
Not a dating app. I don't think we're going to put. We might. I think we're playing around with it, whether we put gender on it or whether we put red team, blue team, purple team on it, rather than gender.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, that's a really interesting take. I think that's a really cool idea. Actually, I applaud that. I think you've taken a tweet and taken it further yet again.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
I think we'll probably put on stuff like events that happen in the community as well. So, like, if you're in Manchester and you didn't know that Jay Harris runs the Manchester Grey Hats, then if you look on our app, you should be able to find out about it if Jay wants to put his information on there.
So in this, and I think I've said this to you before, but I know no diss to Cognisys. Do you see yourself staying in sales then? Because
I love working in sales. I honestly can't think of a better job than being in sales because I get really bored really, really easily. There's no way on this earth I could ever stick at a project for longer than about a week because I get really fucking bored of it. I used to project manage, check that out. I project manage. And now I'm like a magpie. I'm like, oh, something shiny over there. And when I'm in sales, I get to constantly talk about new shiny things with new shiny people all the time. So yeah, I'm definitely sticking in sales.
So, and it was one of the points I want to bring up with you is InfoSec has this weird relationship with salespeople. Like they either don't like them or they do. So, like, what makes you different? Like, why do people like you?
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier because I'm really fucking interesting.
What makes you a good salesperson then? But what makes you a good salesperson without being a salesperson? If you get what I mean. So
I think not trying to actively sell to people. I was talking to Rick Ferguson the other day and he was like, oh, you work in sales? And I was like, yeah. People don't often realize that I work in sales. I mean, I don't publicize the fact on my LinkedIn because I want people to actually talk to me and engage with me. But I think there's so many pushy salespeople out there, like ambulance chasing or pushing products that no one needs or calling people out who've had a breach. Or people who don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I'm so far from technical, it's unreal. Like, literally, I tried doing a try hack me box, and it asked me what the IP address of the VM was, and I was like, "Oh, I'm out. I don't even understand the question." So,
you got that far then. So how did you get?
I created an account with Try Hack Me, and then it asked me for the IP address, and I was like, no, I don't know what this means. But I understand like the security concepts, and I understand like what you should be doing. I just can't tell you exactly how to do it, but that's why I have a team of technical people behind me. So I can kind of talk around like the security strategy side of things without necessarily understanding like how to click all the buttons to make it work. So like, I know it can be a value add to a client, and I know I can have a conversation with them around what we could be doing to help make them better. So yeah, I think that's what makes a good salesperson, actually understanding what it is that you're selling and being passionate about it as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've seen multiple occasions now where people have been sold up river by a very good salesperson, but not a good advisor. So they've sold them fantastic tool. They've sold They've sold them a tool which is fantastic but not right for their organization. Yeah. So I think you definitely struck that balance of being great at your job, and your job is to bring revenue into the business, but also great at advising clients on what they should be doing.
Yeah, like I'd never recommend something for someone if it was too big for them. So like we were talking earlier about pen testing, and if automated pen testing is all you can afford and all you need right now, then that's fine. That's what we'll do. We don't need to switch on a fully managed stock for you, then do it. That's fine.
Do you think the most successful salespeople in cybersecurity are the most credible?
I think that's how you become a good salesperson, by being credible, because people want to come back to you then, or they'll recommend you to someone else. Whereas if you fuck someone over royally by selling them a solution that they don't need, and then they realise 3 months later they don't need it, but they paid like £1 million for it. Well, you might have £1 million on your balance sheet right now, but you aren't going to get it. You aren't going to keep getting that recurring revenue from customers because they won't want to come back and talk to you.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think I totally agree with you. And a lot of vendors have done very, very well at selling snake oil. But it's we're not going to name names here. We're not Greg. But,
I was going to say I've got a list of them I've wrote down.
Yeah. So Vincent, you touched on quite a lot of things that you're working on, and we've kind of touched on what you want to do later on. But yeah, what is the plan for cyber intelligence and your cyber brand? What is next? I know you're doing a lot of work with Tanesh, and you're doing some work with like Sarah Armstrong, and that. So what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, with the CDP and cyber intelligence, we're really we've actively started to look at raising investment over the last couple of months. So we're really looking to bring in some investment into the company to sort of expedite the process of building our platform. So our platform is looking at automating the entire sort of collection and the collection process of OSINT information, and then presenting to that to the client in a way they can consume it. I think a lot of the time you know they collect so much data, but the client doesn't know how to consume it. So that's something we're really trying to work on, and that's so what element. Okay, we're providing you all this information, but what actually are you going to do with it? So that platform is really sort of next for us, and as I said, we're releasing the MVP in 6 weeks time, something like that. So yeah, I think for next steps it's really focusing on the investment stage for cyber intelligence and the platform build, as well as obviously developing the capabilities in house and what we're looking to achieve.
Brilliant, I like it. Well, if anyone wants to know more about Vincent Cook and his businesses and want to know more about his story, I'll leave your limited but available details in the description. And also, if anyone wants to follow Amy, you just Google Amy because she's that famous. You'll find her somehow.
I think you find it's because I have a unique surname. Actually, that's why I come up on the Google search. It's not because
yeah, I'll leave her details there in the bottom as well. But I really appreciate you guys spending your time today discussing all things. It's been really insightful, and I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank you very much for today. This has been the Loopback. We will hopefully come back with another episode very soon. But thank you very much.